This meeting is being recorded.
Hi, Sean. How you doing?
Good morning. How about yourself, Hugh?
Good. Fine, thanks. Nice seeing you.
We'll talk NCAA March Madness later on in this meeting.
Yeah, right.
It all depends on what our brackets are looking like, though, isn't that the case?
As long
I'm Walsh here. Am I on audio? I'm eating lunch, so I didn't want to go on video yet. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Thank you. Can you see me eating lunch, or you can't?
No, I could no.
Okay.
No.
Come on.
My name is Thomasina Bachnight, but I see my name, but no picture, but I can see most of you guys.
That's right.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yep, but we can hear you.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Chris and Corinne, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Okay,
Corinne, you're up.
all right. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about developing a comprehensive fundraising plan. My name is Corinne Sylvia, and I am joined by my esteemed colleague, Chris Sipple, who is a CFRE, and we are seasoned fundraisers with a lot of experience in presenting some of the important facets of fundraising. So today what we're going to do is talk about creating a fundraising plan, and at the end of the session, we will take questions and we will leave time for that. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay. Today, we're going to talk about the steps in developing a fundraising plan, and they are. The first thing we're going to talk about is a fundraising self-assessment audit. That is a document that allows you and your board and colleagues to take a look at various elements of good fundraising techniques and best practices to see whether or not you and your organization have created those items and if they need some work. We're going to talk about prioritizing funding needs and clarifying the case for donating, along with how you target donor constituencies for each funding need. This will all be compiled into a development plan document that you will see at the end of the session. It is, I believe, the last four slides in this presentation. And that is an exceptional template for you to use in creating a development plan. And finally, we will talk about implementing, reviewing, and evaluating, and the importance of doing that. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this fundraising self-assessment has 32 items in it. Would you also go to the next slide too? Thank you. And I'm not going to go through each of these 32 items, but you can see this is sort of an exhaustive list of items that you want to consider as you put your plan together. Now, the important thing about this is that it doesn't happen overnight. So when you see these 32 items, they are a bit daunting, but remember that these kinds of changes that you will implement will be done over time. What we're doing here is examining your program, which will provide not only the fundraisers, but the organizational leaders with an opportunity to reflect upon your program, explore the beliefs and assumptions that you have about the program, evaluate your fundraising data, and assess the weaknesses and strengths of your fundraising effort. So to get started, you might want to use this fundraising self-assessment audit as a template. There are many other templates out there. This one's pretty good. It's got a great deal of content in it, which you can, I think would work very well for you. Also, you may want to develop other good questions, but mostly you want to be ready to challenge the assumptions that you have and to seize future opportunities that are available to you. You want to use this assessment to create a shared picture of your fund development program. Then board and staff together will outline strategies to address areas to improve. And the reason I say board and staff is that fundraising in a well-developed, well-run organization is actually a team effort. It's not just the fundraising professional staff going out and raising money. It's a partnership between the board and the staff together to raise funds to support the mission of an organization. So in order to create the kind of buy-in that you want from the board and from the staff, you need to work together as a team in approaching this self-assessment and in defining what your future opportunities are. This will also help you examine your organization's readiness for fundraising. It takes a look at board and staff roles. It takes a look at systems and procedures, cultivation and stewardship, and it talks about an integrated development plan. Do you have one in place? So I highly recommend, and again, I would just say, it does seem daunting, but it's a tool, and it's a tool that will strengthen your program over time. It doesn't have to be implemented all at once, but you want to implement it as quickly as you can. Could I have the next slide, please? The reason Chris is helping me with the slides is that I'm not technologically capable of this. So where we want to go with this slide is when you put together your strategic plan, which is essential for any organization, you need to have a strategic plan, not only to raise funds from foundations, but you also need a plan in place that reflects the goals, reflects the values and the critical success factors that you want to achieve in your organization. So you take the vision, the mission, the values, the critical success factors, and in the strategic planning process, you will create goals, big goals, goals that will help you drive your fundraising program and provide the kinds of support and documents that you need to be successful. Excuse me? For example, if your mission is to provide social services to an underserved organization, that's your vision, that's your mission. One goal, big goal, may be to increase the number of constituents served. Your fundraising approach under business strategies will be to communicate in an urgent and compelling way the need that has to be addressed, the description of how you're going to meet that need, what that need costs, and the impact that will be achieved, not in terms of the organization's needs, but in terms of the individuals who are going to be impacted by the program. What we know is that donors give because they want to make a difference in the lives of someone. So it behooves us as development professionals to talk in terms of the change that's going to occur, the kinds of impact that will occur within the lives of the individuals, your constituents, your clients, the people whom you serve. And that drives a donor's gift. You want to merge the two, and you want to speak in a compelling way when you talk to the donor about this impact. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, so to prioritize funding needs and to clarify the case for donating, it's really well to provide donors with a variety of options. Some have said that the last true frontier in the United States is one's ability to decide who and what they want to support philanthropically. I don't know if that's true or not, but I do know that donors like to be able to choose what it is they're going to support. So in order to clarify this, in order to make the donor understand, I think the first thing we need to do is discuss what the need is to be met so that the donor has a clear understanding of what he or she is being asked to support. Then you want to address why it's important. In a strong and moving and compelling case for support, as I mentioned earlier, you want to have a written document, which is your case for support, but you also want to have language that you can use in an individual conversation that is strong and moving and compelling and brings together your mission with the impact that the donor's gift is going to make. You need a solid plan, which really speaks to number 3. How is our nonprofit going to meet the need? You need a solid plan for how you're going to meet the goals, and it needs to be realistic, achievable, and one that you know you can achieve. So how is the nonprofit going to meet the need? Solid plan. How much will it cost? You want to do a cost benefit amongst other priorities. But what I would say here is it's very important to show a donor how much it's going to cost to make an impact on one person. Because sometimes when we approach donors, we use big words, we talk about big funds, we talk about big missions, but if a donor knows that $35 is going to provide food for a family of 4 for a week, that's compelling. I can write that check for $35 or $70 or $105 or whatever that number is. So I think monetizing it really brings it home for a lot of donors. Talking to donors about who else is involved, collaboration with other nonprofits, leadership among professionals in the field really helps a donor understand that you not only work collaboratively and effectively, but you work cost effectively as well. And there is a sense of leadership about the work that you do. Then finally, you want to take a look at what do you need from me, the donor? How does the donor fit in? How is their gift going to have an impact? How is their gift going to change this person's life? And you want to be as specific as possible, because what we know is that donors are more apt to fund something when they can put their arms around a project. They understand what it is that their dollars are going to do. And finally, you want to know what's in it for me, the donor, because even though this is philanthropy, the truth is most donors look at nonprofits as organizations in which they invest. They want to invest in making a difference in their community. So they're looking for avenues for meaningful involvement or participation or recognition or even anonymity. So you want to know what it is that the donor is going to respond to. And that speaks to the relationship that you want to build with the donor. And then finally, you want to talk about how will we know what we've accomplished, what we aim to do? What is the impact? What is the it that you're trying to accomplish that the donor's funding is going to help you accomplish? Okay, next slide, please. It's important to identify your target markets. So let's talk about the strategies that will affect your goals. What we have in this slide is the various target markets that donors may fall into, level 1 through level 5, level 1 being minimal involvement to level 5, where a donor is very involved, very invested, and makes large gifts. So the level 1 donors are the ones that you reach through social media and public relations. Presumably, they're new to your organization and need to know more about you, need to know you better before they're going to make a gift. So you want to build your organization's relationship with them before you solicit them. The level 2 donors are the ones that you invite to events and to whom you would send an annual appeal. These are folks who, if you want to move level 1 up to level 2, you would invite those folks to events, and you would then send an annual appeal. Level 3 are the donors who volunteer, and you have a deeper and they have a deeper knowledge of your mission. Individual follow-up is important to build the relationship. Research tells us that donors who volunteer are much more apt to make a significant gift than donors who do not volunteer. Level 4 are your major donors. They are the individuals who make the largest gifts to your organization on an annual basis. These are the donors that you want to maintain a very strong relationship with. This is where you're building to. This is one of the levels you would love to have most of your donors get to, is in the major donor level. So that's all about increasing the relationship you have with them. You know what the donor likes about your organization. You know what they're interested in. You know what their giving capacity is. You know what excites them and turns them on. And you have a relationship where you can come to the donor and you can talk to the donor. And on those occasions, you would want to include either a CEO and a board chair, or one or the other. For level 5 donors, you definitely want to have both the CEO and the board chair. And some might argue that on both level 4 and level 5 donors, you want to have both the CEO and the board chair there. And that's because it shows a sign of respect for that donor and the relationship that you have with them. And donors of that level generally want to talk to the top person. They don't necessarily want to talk to the fundraiser or to a programmatic person. Okay, next slide, please. So how is it that we identify the target markets? Okay, consider who and where your donors are in the target market list. What's the geography, the age, the income, the psychographics, and so forth? What are the sources? Are you asking for an individual gift, a foundation gift, a corporate gift? Because each one of those sources will require a different approach, a different, if you will, way of approaching them to talk about their giving and their interest in the project. Depending upon where the donor falls in your donor scale, you want to decide on what size gift. For example, if you have a major donor, you don't want to ask them for a very small gift. You want to ask them for a medium to large gift, depending upon their giving capacity. Approaches are good to take a look at because it gives you an idea of how you may segment your donors. A large group might work very well for donors who don't make big gifts, they make smaller gifts, and they want to learn a little more about your organization. Whereas individual meetings are ideal for your major donors and your deferred and planned giving donors. Small gifts can be solicited through letters, events, and social media, but remember that the age of your donor makes a difference. For example, a young donor may respond better to a text than a 65-year-old donor who is more accustomed to a personal visit. This slide helps you sort out the best approach and gift size for each solicitation. And another thing to keep in mind is this. In 2021, $484.5 billion was donated in this country. The generosity came from individuals who gave it 67% of that funding came from individuals. 19% came from foundations, 9% from individual bequests, and 4% from corporations. So you want to take a look at that and see where your ask needs to be and where the sweet spot is. For some organizations, corporate funding is very important in terms of events and sponsorships. For others, individual requests are more important because they're raising more money and they have a broader approach to relationship building. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so all of this comes together and is compiled into a development plan document. The outline, the action outline, will include tactics, due dates, assignments. The goals will include number of prospects, number of donors and participants, gifts and participants, and number of dollars. And while this is sort of glommed together, you'll have a better sense of that towards the end of this program when Chris Sipple and I talk about the development plan and how these numbers and these actions fall into place within that development plan. Now I'm going to turn this over to Chris, who will present you with some great information on how you can successfully solicit, cultivate, and steward your donors.
Thank you. Okay, before I move from this slide, I just wanted to talk to you about the fact that your fundraising plan is just one level of planning. So if you think of it in terms of levels, you start with your strategic plan. You start with who are we, who do we want to be, and what is it going to take to get there? From that strategic plan, you then build your annual budget. From your annual budget, you then look at your annual development plan. So you are taking your budget numbers and you are popping them into a plan in terms of how are you going to get there. That is especially important if you are a nonprofit that does not charge for your services. So you have to figure out where all those numbers are going to come from. That's all going to be in your development plan. So I just want you to start thinking about levels and layers of how you're doing your planning. It all adds up. So in terms of this, implementing, reviewing, evaluating, and updating your plan once you have it, think about language. So we talk about fundraising. When people talk about fundraising, that can be a really scary word. And we'll talk a little bit about how to overcome some of that fear as a board member in a bit. But fundraising, to me, that word is transactional. So if you think of fundraising, it's Girl Scouts out selling Girl Scout cookies. Now they're raising a lot of money, but the donor is getting something very specific for what they're giving the money to. So they're getting a box of cookies, okay? Development, to me, is the next step. So development is you're developing your relationships with the people that you are speaking to. So it's much more relational. The step above that is advancement. You're advancing your mission through the relationship building that you're doing. And you may be doing that through some transactional things like fundraising, okay? So raising funds is not enough. You really have to look at the relational aspects of what you're doing as well. So you absolutely, when you're putting together your development plan, you have a budget in there. You have in there lines about, I have to raise this much money. This much is going to come from individuals. This much is going to come from foundations. This much might come from corporations through a special event. This might come from specific things. You absolutely have number results in your fundraising plan, but you also have to look at what are the relational results that you're getting from this plan. The ultimate aim to doing fundraising is to put together puzzle pieces. You find people in the community who are interested in your mission and interested in helping you do what you're doing for the community, and you put them together with the needs that you are meeting in that community. Does that make sense? So you are identifying people who can help you move your mission forward. You're cultivating supportive partners for the long term. So if you look down here at the bottom of this particular slide, you're identifying people who might have the willingness to help you and the means to help you. You're researching that they have those means and they, that they are interested. You're cultivating them. You may come back and solicit them for a gift. And then you're stewarding that gift. You're showing them how the gift that they have made to your organization has made a difference in what you're doing in the community. And then the cycle continues again. So Corinne talked about this a little bit in terms of the money that's raised every year in the United States comes from individuals, whether it's individuals when they are living or individuals through bequests and planned gifts. The majority of the funds that are raised in the United States comes from individuals. So if you're thinking about where you're going to put your efforts, it's really easy, especially if you're a board who's uncomfortable with fundraising and you may not have staff. It's very easy to say, okay, we're going to do an event. We're going to write a few grants. We're going to send out an annual letter. You need to do those things. They are a piece of what you do, especially as Corinne talked about, that entree level of people who don't know about you. An event is a great way to get the community to know what you're doing. An annual appeal or a newsletter is a great way to let the community know what you're doing. But then you have to gather those folks and you move them to a different level. You give them a volunteer opportunity. People might be interested enough to become board members. People might be interested enough to become major donors. The direct mail, the events, especially the events, very labor and resource intensive. It's going to cost you a lot of money to make very little money. On the other hand, if you're going and looking at the relationship-based asks, where you're sitting down, you as the CEO, you as the board chair, you're sitting down with a donor and you're asking for a gift, that is going to have your highest impact. So while it might be the scarier way to do it, it's the more cost-effective way to do it in the long run. You sit down with a person who has an interest in what you're doing, you make a pitch to them, you talk to them about what their gift is going to be able to do for the community that you serve, and you receive a gift. 80% of your funds, again, come from this relationship-based individual, okay? Lowest cost, highest return. It takes time to cultivate these kind of relationships. This is not to say, again, that you're not doing this other arm's length stuff, that you're not doing the direct mail, that you're not doing the social media. You have to make sure you're still introducing your organization to the bigger community and you're still bringing people in. This is sort of your pipeline to this other group, okay? But fundraising can be scary. So how many of you, especially if you're on a board, have heard or have said, I'll do anything but ask for money? That's not what I signed up for. If you are lucky enough to have hired a development staff or an ED, hey, that's the staff job. That's why we hired them. Or I give my time. That's the same thing. I have heard that, especially working with fire companies who say, I run into burning buildings. It is not my job to ask for money. Galas, grants, and golf. That's my fundraising. That's what I'll do. I'll invite somebody to a gala and, I'll introduce you to a funder and, or you as the ED or the development person should sit in the cave and write the grant. That's fundraising. However, like we said, the majority of the funds come from individuals. Think about when you give money to organizations. Why do you give? The underlying reason is you resonate with their mission. The indirect reason is somebody asked you. So whether that was somebody asked you while you were at an event or somebody asked you through a fundraising letter, someone asked you. So let's see. In terms of being afraid to ask for money, I remember when I was in college and I was in the news, I was the photographer for the News and Media Relations office. I didn't have anything to do in the summer, so they sent me next door to the development office and I got to help them put their things together. And I thought, I could never do this. Never in a million years could I ask for money. And 3 months into my first development job, when I was told they would just teach me what to do, it would be fine, I was thrown into running a capital campaign for a fire company. Wow. And we raised 1.8 million. I remember the first time when I stood across with the fire guys at one side of the table, a donor on the other side. We had asked him for $50,000. He had never given us anything. He said, how would $200,000 do you? I saw the look on the guys' faces and I was hooked. Because it was connecting somebody who wanted to do good in the community with the guys who were doing the good, making that connection. It was puzzle pieces and I was hooked. I mean, this is something I could absolutely get behind. And it was relationship building. We ended up with a really great relationship with this guy and it was wonderful. So taking the fear out of fundraising. These are some of the ways to do that. And it is a scary thing. People don't, in our culture, they don't like to talk about money. Solicitors are made, not born. For most people, asking for money, even talking about money can be really difficult, but you practice. So if you're going to be going out and asking someone for a major gift, a couple things, make your own stretch gift. If you are the CEO of a nonprofit, or you are the development director, or you are on the board, make a gift that says this organization is important to me. It is very difficult to go out and ask for money if you have not invested to begin with. Again, the fire guys that I was working with way back when, they said, hey, we run into burning buildings. That's great. But I wanted to make sure that every single one of them gave to the level that they were comfortable with so that they had buy-in. You can't go out and ask for the community to build something for you if you're not going to help build it too.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just mean running into the burning buildings. That meant spending, $75 to buy a brick. So make your own stretch gift, confirm your own commitment to the organization. Be an ambassador. When you're out in the community, talk about what the organization does. A lot of organizations do really good things in the community, but nobody knows that it's happening because nobody's talking about it. So be a good ambassador when you're out chatting with somebody at dinner. Talk about the organization you're a part of and about what they do. You might find somebody who'd be very interested in being a volunteer, being a donor. You never know. A sleuth. One of the ways that you can be an ambassador for your organization is finding other people who might be interested, putting those puzzle pieces together. So you're always out when you're talking to other people, finding out if they're interested in learning more about the nonprofit you're a part of. Or you might be out at a similar organization and you see their annual report. You funnel that annual report to your fundraiser or your CEO so they can see other people who might be interested in the types of things that you do. Think about what kinds of people in the community your nonprofit could partner with. So you have a historical organization. Maybe there's a school that they could partner with where you would find some really interesting connections that shows what you're doing in the community and how you're working together. Talk when you're talking to people, see if they would be interested in being on your nonprofit mailing list. This is something that you need to get in the habit of if you're going to be doing events. If you're going to be doing small events out in the community to introduce your organization to the community, make sure you have a mailing list when people check in so that people can get on your mailing list, can sign up and opt in to find out more about what you do. Look for leads in the press, in social media, other nonprofit materials. Grab all those annual reports of similar nonprofits. And then ask people, as you're talking to people about your organization, they might be interested, they might not, but say, who else do you think we should be talking to? Who do you think might be really interested in what we do? Cultivating. This is one way, if you are the development director or you are the CEO of a nonprofit and your board is reluctant to get involved in the development process. This is one of those ways where you can really get them involved on a level that's non-threatening. So two things. One, those sticky notes that are sort of like a 4x5, you can get those made that look like your letterhead. So when you're sending out an annual appeal letter, pull out 5 or 10 for each board member. Pull out 5 or 10 and have them write individual notes on those stickies and pop them on the appeal. It's going to stand out. They don't even have to know that person. You can give them a script that says, hi, I am a board member for this organization. This is why it's important to me. Your gift would do this. You can, have a set thing that you have them say or have them write on these notes, and do that 5 to 10 for each board member. And you're reaching those people on a much different level. People get a lot of solicitations in the mail. You get something with somebody's personal handwriting on it, you're going to read it more. It's not going to go right in the trash. You're going to read it, especially if it's somebody who's writing to you. You're certainly going to read it. So there's one way. Another way is to do thank you calls. So again, they don't have to be somebody that you know. It doesn't have to pick up to a real live person. You can leave something on an answering machine or on their voicemail. Again, give them a script and say, I'm a board member for X nonprofit. I just wanted to thank you for your recent gift. It made such a difference to the organization. The end. That's it. You're not asking them for anything. It makes a huge difference to the donor that you've actually taken the time to thank them. They've been thanked by a board member. And these two things can be ways to get your board into the development process that's not as threatening as, oh my God, I have to go ask my friends for money. Okay. Let's go into the asking for money. Be a solicitor. Solicitors ask a prospect face-to-face for a gift. So say you're going to go to one of your donors. This has been a long time donor, and you're going to ask them for a gift for a specific thing. You want to make sure that that's a thing that person's going to resonate with. And if it's not, have a couple of other things in your back pocket. So say you start talking about the specific thing you want to raise money for, and the person's like, not really what I'm interested in. Maybe you have two other things in your pocket that you can talk about that they might be interested in. You also want to practice. So this sounds silly, but it makes a huge difference to sit down with somebody who's pretending to be that donor and practice asking back and forth, and practice saying no, practice saying, I don't think so, practice saying, that's an awful big number, and figure out what you're going to say. It makes a huge difference when you actually get in front of that person. You are not as nervous and you've already practiced it.
Yeah.
Be a steward. This is once that gift has been made, how do you make sure that you're letting A, that donor, and B, your larger community know what their money is going towards, how you are being a good steward of the funds that have been entrusted to you to make your mission happen. So making sure that you are telling a good story in terms of how the gifts that are given to the nonprofit are used is really, really important in terms of the fundraising continuum. I have to move something so I can see. Okay. Compelling purpose. Again, as you're going out to talk to somebody, and this is true whether you're going to make an individual ask or whether you're going to write a grant. You are going to be asking for a specific amount of money for a specific thing. You have to have a really good case for support. That is your case for support. That is your general case in terms of the mission of what you do. But it's also the case of, why is this particular thing important for the nonprofit to have right now? What's the urgent need? There should be specific things that you have in this case that talks about that, so the donor has a clear understanding of what they're being asked to support and a solid plan for meeting those goals. So say what they're asking for costs X amount of money. You're asking for the donor for a piece of that. Make sure you're also telling them where you're going to find the rest of it, so that they don't think they're throwing their money into a hole that's not going to get filled. And then evidence that the gift will have some meaningful impact. One of a really good way to do this is to gather stories from the people that you serve. You make them anonymous, but you have those lovely little 2-line vignettes that you can say, one of your clients said. Those are really good stories to have in your pocket when you do these visits. Meaningful cultivation and relationship development. I'm hoping that all of you have a really good CRM, a really good donor database.
Yeah.
Because especially in smaller nonprofits, but in any nonprofit, your board is going to change all the time. Your leadership changes quite often. Your development, if you have a development person, that position typically changes every 2 years. I know that sounds odd, but it does. So you have to make sure that you have a really good donor database, because that's your institutional memory. And if you don't have that, and if you have an upheaval and your longtime CEO leaves, or your board member who has all these relationships that they have built over the years leaves, then what? Who's taking on the cultivation of these people who have been really good partners to your organization, if the people who are coming after those folks don't know anything about those partnerships? The donor database is not just a place to put a name, an address, and a list of gifts. It should be a place where you can also link up who the relationships are. So maybe that person has a relationship with this board member. Even if that board member's left, if that's in the database, the next person who looks up that donor can go to that ex-board member and say, hey, can you tell me about this person? And you keep that relationship connected. Understanding donor motivations. People give for a variety of reasons. That's a whole other topic. But understanding why they're giving. Are they giving because they want to do good? Are they giving because this mission really speaks to them? Are they giving because the organization really helped somebody in their family? Why are they giving? Are they giving because they really like the recognition in the community? Find out ways that you can involve them based on what their interests are. But again, I can't stress enough the donor database and making sure you have as much information in there as possible about each person, even if they're not a donor. I can't tell you how many organizations I've gone into. Somebody hasn't given in a while, somebody's never given, and people take them out of the database. Don't do it. Don't do it. Unless somebody has actually asked to be taken out of the database, don't purge them, because you never know. My first planned gift that I ever got was for an organization where we sent out a combined appeal. That person had given 10 years ago $5. We sent out an appeal for I can't remember what kind of gift this was. I'm not going to remember it. Anyway, it was a planned giving vehicle. It appealed to them. They gave 3 $10,000 gifts in a row because that particular vehicle appealed to them. This was a $5 giver 10 years ago. It's certainly, if you were looking at the big picture of the organization, would have been somebody, if you weren't thinking, you would just call them. Don't do it. Don't do it. You never know. Okay. All right. So we've got a sample development plan, and I'm assuming that you will get these slides if you have signed up for this workshop, that you will get these slides and you will see the development plan. So here is what I talked about earlier. You do your strategic plan, you do your annual budget based on your strategic plan and what you plan to do that year. Then you have that number from the budget and you figure out, okay, we need to do this much this year. Where's it going to come from? And how are we going to break that out? Corrine.
Yeah, don't underestimate the ability of federated campaigns. I worked for an organization once that provided services for battered women and a whole array of women's services. And back in the 1990s, we were raising $750,000 through the federated campaign. Those are gifts from individuals who can't write the big check, but every month they would have $10, $15, $20 taken from their paycheck to give to our organization, dedicated to our organization. And those dollars really added up. I say this because not only does it work with federated campaigns, but when you're thinking about your financial goals, you also want to think about making it available for donors who don't have access to writing the big check, making it available to them that they can give on a monthly or a quarterly basis. It is astonishing how well that works. And the donor, the research shows us that the donor tends to stay with your organization longer. So don't mean to digress, just wanted to point that out. What you have here with the financial goals is a really important decider, to use a not very good term, of how you're going to allocate your fundraising approach. And starting with government federal grants, if you are an organization that accepts those kinds of grants and seeks them, starting with them is probably makes the most sense, in county grants and sponsors as well. What you want to do is project what you want to raise, what you have actually raised, and the percentage of the income that sort of gift provides for you. Strategically, you want to start with non-monetary goals that are going to have a big impact on your success. For example, 100% giving by your board. This is something that Chris had mentioned earlier. It is very, very important. And the reason for that is that if you are soliciting a donor, you as a board member are soliciting a donor might very well ask you, well, Corinne, how much did you give to the organization? It's a perfectly acceptable question. If I say to that donor, well, I haven't made a gift, what that says is that the family, the inside group that runs this organization is not committed and invested enough to make a gift. So if a donor tells you, well, I give my time, that's fine. If a board member tells you, I give my time and that's enough, it is not enough. Everybody needs to make a contribution, and the staff needs to make contributions too, to the extent that they are able to do so. You want to take a look at this plan that you have put together at least 6 times a year to review it, see where you are, update it, change. Remember, these plans are not written in stone. They are a guide, and it may be that halfway through the year, you discovered that you're raising more money in one area and less money in another. All right, you might need to adjust the plan accordingly, always with an eye towards meeting or exceeding the goal that you have set for each of these areas. Personal solicitation campaign. Do you want to take that, Chris?
Yep. So as you think about your development plan as a whole, one of the ways you want to break this out into, so you want to look at how many prospects you have. So you have 26 prospects in terms of your board. That means each board member needs to be asked for a specific amount of money. Say you've set a goal that you want the board itself to raise $25,000. You want to make sure that they are being personally asked by the board president.
Yeah.
Each board member. So you're not going to be sending just a specific letter to all the board. You're going to have them be personally asked by the board chair. Now, you're going to be bringing people onto your board who have a variety of abilities to give, and that's fine. You need that. When you're looking at the skill sets that you want to bring in, it might not be somebody who has a lot of money, but you want to make sure that they are giving a gift that is personally significant to them. I am not a big fan of when you bring somebody on a board saying, you know, you're expected to give this much money. I want somebody to give every year a gift that is personally significant to them, that shows their leadership on the board. Let's see, individual solicitation. So say you've got your top prospects, top 50 to 75 donors. You are going to do a plan, and it's going to be just one sheet of paper for each one, saying, this is when you want to solicit them. This is what you're going to solicit them for. This is the amount, and this is going to be who is going to be the team that will be soliciting them. So it's one sheet of paper for each of these people. And you're going to be looking at who, when, what, and how much. Fundraising event, say you're going to have one in October, you're going to figure out how many people you are bringing in that's going to make it be a successful event, and how much money you expect to gross from that event. I'm sorry, net from that event. And the net number is what goes in that fundraising budget. Again, same with a benefit concert. For events, you're going to put the net number in the budget that's at the top of the development plan. Direct mail.
Okay, direct mail. Direct mail is where you reach the people who make the modest gifts through your organization, but don't be, what's the word? You want to find ways to continually engage and bring them into the organization through more than direct mail, because the direct mail is usually the first gift that a donor makes. So you may send out 2 pieces of direct mail a year, and you want to identify the people who you're going to solicit in each of those mailings. For example, if you know a donor only makes 1 gift a year, only solicit them once a year until you begin to build that relationship. So let's say you have 2,000 donors and your 2,500 prospects. You want to have 2,000 donors. Your goal is $8,000. You want to take a look at how you're going to follow up with that in terms of newsletters, holiday mailing possibly, follow-up mailing to major donors and so forth. So what you want to do is try to address all of your direct mail in terms of groups that you're going to mail to now, groups that you're going to mail to later. And what you want to do is time your newsletters, the other pieces that are going to go out to individuals in a way that your donors through direct mail are not receiving just pieces of mail asking for money once a year. You want them to receive a newsletter. You want them to receive an annual report. And all of this can be done through the mail, but you want to make sure that you're checking in with them. You're sending them information that will deepen their knowledge of the organization through direct mail pieces.
Karina, I'm going to stop you because of timing, I want to make sure we leave some time for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
And Stephanie and Hugh, how did you want to handle questions?
At this time, I'm going to ask everybody to unmute themselves and just jump in if you have a question into the chat box, if you feel comfortable that way. We are monitoring the chat box. I do know that we have one question to kick off, and that is from Laura. She asked if you could give an example of a federated campaign.
Want me to take that one, Chris?
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah, the federated campaign might be the United Way campaign. It might be mostly, in my experience, it's through United Way campaigns, through these collective large organizations that raise money for nonprofits in the community. And they may be divided by region, they may be divided by state, and usually members of the board of directors of the United Way or the federated agency take some role in raising money from their employees in the campaign. That's what a federated campaign is. You work for an organization, your organization decides that they're going to support such a campaign. Someone comes into your workplace, gives you a presentation, and gives you an opportunity to join the campaign. That's generally how that works out. Does that answer?
So one of the things I wanted to say about that is there are organizations who decide they do not want to be United Way organizations. Because if you are a United Way organization, it means that you have to follow the blackout rules in terms of not soliciting when they solicit. That does not mean you cannot receive gifts through the United Way. The Chester County United Way, you don't have to have a donor number. The Philadelphia, the one in Philly and New Jersey, you get a donor choice number. And then people can give to their work campaigns and designate it to you because you've got that donor choice number. So it doesn't mean you have to be a United Way agency in order to receive those gifts.
Good point. Thank you.
I believe, Sean, you had an observation to make?
Yes, thank you. This is fresh, and I believe this reinforces a lot of what we've been talking about here today. On Saturday, on the campus of Alvernia University, there was a fundraising event, and really what's significant about it, at least what we felt, is that first of all, there were over 500 people in attendance, and many of them were current or previous donors. And so, it serves as a thank you. And then for people who hadn't donated previously, it was so interactive that, I mean, we could see, the people that would be benefiting. And that's important because the I Am Able Foundation removes or lowers barriers that stand between people with cognitive and physical and behavioral challenges, and stand between them and just, outdoor activity and just sporting events. There's an example here in terms of a triathlon they'll be conducting in May. And so coming back to the fundraiser, it was interactive in that, they had about a dozen, we'll call them high performance or recumbent wheelchairs and bicycles. And also one thing that really stood out, I didn't know why when I looked over and I saw this large batting cage, with netting around it, why that they had it there. And so my son and my wife, they were there. And so we went over and just to, go in and try it out. And anyway, when we went inside, we noticed that, there was a mask. Thought that was kind of a strange way to protect your face. And so anyway, the mask was, like a masquerade mask like this. And one of the eye holes was taped over, and the other eye hole had translucent wax paper over it. And so swinging a bat and trying to hit a ball, first of all, it's hard enough. Anyway, it really just allowed everybody to understand what it's like, in this case, to try to hit a ball being pitched at you. And so just things that are, just fun and enjoyable become difficult with people, in this case, with visual impairment. And so it just, anyway, it worked out really well. And so I'm new to the organization, so I'm going to certainly share everything that we've talked about here with our development director. And if anybody has any other questions, I'll put my email in the chat.
Yeah, Sean, what you're talking about is telling their story without words.
Yeah.
They're showing what they're able to do
Yes.
without using words,
Yes.
and that's great.
Yeah.
Interactive and immersive. Those are two words.
The next question in the group chat is, in your experience, do boards classify their members as cultivators, solicitors, or stewards?
It depends
Not
on the
really.
board. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Most of the boards that I work with, no, not really. What's your experience, Chris?
If you're asking whether, they put themselves in these different categories, I think it depends on your board. You go to a hospital board, they're used to doing this kind of thing, and they would probably consider themselves cultivators. Other boards, they just don't think like that. I think as a board chair, or as a CEO, or as the fundraiser of the organization, or as the development chair of the organization, it's your job to make the board, to be the cheerleader for the board, and to help them see what they can do, and help them see themselves as fundraisers for the organization, as cultivators, as stewards, and give them the tools to let them do that for the organization.
That's a really good point,
Thank
Chris,
you.
because
Thank you, Chris. But I just wanted to know if it was a worthwhile activity for every board to do this, especially nonprofit boards.
Oh, certainly, in terms of looking at the ways that they can participate and be those sort of things, absolutely.
Sorry, Corinne, I didn't mean to speak over you.
That's fine. That's fine. You raise a good question. I guess what I would also say is that in each situation, a board person may be a solicitor, but in another situation, they may be a door opener. In another situation, they may serve another function. So it really just depends. Each individual solicitation is highly, highly choreographed and planned with the donor's interests in mind. And so you bring to that solicitation the people who it would be very hard for that donor to say no to. And in each case, that might be different.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to speak to a couple questions. Recommendation for a small CRM, Little Green Light,
Yep.
is really good in terms of actually having a lot of functionality for what it is. And you can, if people don't know about TechSoup, please look up TechSoup. Nonprofits can sign up for TechSoup and get free or low-cost software and hardware. Little Green Light, you can get your first year free. And then if you have a small database, it's under 2,500 people. I think it's $450 a year, but it has a lot of functionality and it's one that I would really recommend. Big time-consuming events that raise money, but less time-consuming activities such as grants. There are places for events. Events are not my favorite thing, but I think they're really necessary because they are your fundraisers. They can be a lot of different things. In my mind, if an event breaks even, I'm happy because it serves a lot of different functions other than just being a fundraiser. I do not think of events as fundraisers. I don't. I know they can be, but that's not how I think of them.
Agreed.
All right, well, I think we're at the end. Chris and Corinne, thank you. Is there any tidbits of information that you want to share with everybody to close out?
Be passionate about what you're doing. It makes a huge difference and it makes it more fun.
Absolutely. And it makes other people feel passionate about what you're doing as well. Either one of us can certainly answer questions offline if you want to email either one of us. I think that is on the first slide that I think will be given to all of you. So we're always welcome to answer, we're always happy to answer questions.
Thank you so very much. Yes, we have recorded the session. We will email out a copy of that along with the deck to the attendees of today's session. And I thank you, Chris and Corinne, for very much for this. I think it was invaluable for just about everyone today.
Okay.
Thank you.